Hello everyone, my name is Guillaume ERARD. I'm the person instructing this class. It's quite unusual what I'm going to do today because I'm going to provide a commentary on that class for a couple of reasons. The first one is that it was held in Japanese, so perhaps it's not the easiest thing for most people that are subscribed to my channel to understand. And also, even if you did understand Japanese, the sound quality on that video is actually quite poor. So I figured it could be a good opportunity to actually explain a little bit of what I'm trying to show during that class, especially because the context is rather different compared to what I do usually. Because of COVID, I wasn't able to go to my summer seminar series in Europe, which I do usually every year, and I got offered a couple of opportunities to teach in Japan instead. So this one is very much one of those. This is taking place during Budo festival. There were Aikido classes as well as Kobudo demonstrations. So for me, teaching Aikido in Japan outside of my regular classes in my dojo is quite unusual in seminars. So it took a little bit of thinking to work out what to show on that day. When I go back to Europe, I usually teach older forms of Aikido, some things from Daito-ryu, and try to highlight the differences, the similarities, and why one school or one group does this or that. While in Japan, I figured it could be interesting to do something different. In other words, to do something which is closer to what I've learned while I was in France. I felt like that transfer of skills and ways to do Aikido could be interesting for the Japanese. Most importantly, what I'm doing during that class that you're watching now is trying to emphasize the way Aikido is practiced, I guess, in the line of Christian Tissier. But more specifically, one teacher that I've been following for quite some time, or that I used to follow, whose name is Philippe Goutard, who's been very, very often to Japan. He comes every year. And he's developed a very, very interesting and quite unique way to teach. In other words, what he's doing is using the Aikido technique to trigger something in the partner, and most importantly to develop the body of the partner, to remove fears and all those things. So I thought it was quite interesting to actually show that to the Japanese. So the theme for the class that I'm teaching right now is generosity, and by generosity I mean being generous with each other. Often we go to seminars and we are interested to perfect our skills. We go for ourselves. The idea for that class was to go to seminar for others, for the partners, and see what could happen. So immediately what I asked was to people to refrain from talking. I started highlighting the fact that you must see that actually in the subtitles, because I will add subtitles to that video so that you can read what I said on the day. That, you know, if you're doing Aikido, ideally, in my opinion, your words, your actions, and your thoughts should match. So it doesn't matter, you don't need to speak. And in fact, often words can be deceiving. We tend to find excuses when we use words. We say sorry, we sometimes mean it, we sometimes don't. We sometimes find ourselves excuses. For instance, oh, I'm sorry, today I'm tired, or I'm sorry, I'm jet lagged, so I'm not at my peak. All those sort of things. So I prefer to remove that. I prefer to remove any sort of speech during practice and let Aikido technique be the medium through which we communicate, which of course comes very handy when you're practicing with people who do not share your language. So that's the theme for that class. What you can see us do right now on that technique Tenchinage is that I am highlighting the fact that you can use this technique Tenchinage to open up the body of the partner. When we go to seminars, we don't necessarily know the person with whom we are practicing. And with this, there's a lot of different emotions and feelings that come, like sometimes a little bit of anxiety or fear sometimes, depending who you're training with, especially like I can imagine, look at the guy I'm training with right now. I'm so much taller and heavier than him. What I absolutely don't want to do is to intimidate him. On the other hand, I want him to feel more confident in his Aikido and to experiment things and that sort of feelings that I want to trigger. So I felt like Tenchinage is very interesting as a technique to do that, because you are quite physically, practically opening up the other's body. So in other words, you're excessive in that sense, in the way that I'm showing here. This is an excessive opening, but it's done on purpose. It's done on purpose to let go of the guard immediately from the first technique of the seminar, with the first person we're practicing. Let go of the guard, open up, and try to work on something else. Of course, there are different ways to do that techniques, which leaves less openings and so on. And of course, I know them all. Being a practitioner and instructor of Daito-ryu Aikido, I know that. So I know why I am actually changing the technique, if you like. I am making compromises because I want to deliver another sort of message. The importance is, of course, when you're making compromise or when you're changing slightly the technique, to know that you're doing it and to know why you're doing it. So all that knowledge in Daito-ryu, though I'm not showing it during that seminar, of course, is very important for me as a guide and a guardrail to make sure that what I do is still sensible. So here, same technique, except that I include an Irimi Tenkan at the beginning, which is a little bit unusual in many schools of Aikido, but in that case, which is again an opportunity to get to that contact close to the partner and to trigger an imbalance and to make the partner move, not with tricks, but just with the body, the move of the whole body. In other words, without pain, without strikes, without atemi, just with the body, moving the body as a whole unit to make the other person move. That's the idea. We're staying relaxed, removing tensions, removing fears. Of course, during Ukemi, it's very much the same thing. This is something that I will develop during that class in a moment, in the time of taking Ukemi, without tension, without resistance, while still, of course, remaining powerful, present in the technique, all those things. Here, what I'm highlighting right now is actually the difference between holding strong and holding tightly or holding for a long time. A lot of people, when you ask them to hold strong, they'll quickly build tension in other areas than just the wrist, than just the hand, including the elbow, the shoulder, sometimes the whole the neck, and so on. Of course, when you know a little bit of anatomy, you know that the hands functions through the muscles and the tendons in the forearm. But it's quite sometimes difficult to dissociate those. In other words, to have a super strong grip without having tension in the elbow, in the shoulder, and in the neck. That's what I'm trying to highlight here. People sometimes confuse when you tell them, hold me very strong. You can feel all those tensions building in their body, and of course, in that sense, that makes them extremely easy to control and to immobilize. So here is the opposite: is having a very, very strong grip with the hand, while keeping the elbows, the shoulders relaxed, and the rest of the body available. This is the way you take Ukemi without tension, safely. This is the way you do a technique while not being prisoner of your own grab. There's nothing easier than controlling somebody who's stiff. I love that when I'm teaching Daito-ryu especially, and I find strong people with different martial art background. The easiest for me is when somebody holds very stiff and very strong. I have problem, however, with people who don't hold stiff or strong. They are a lot harder to control, and you're gonna have to create those tension in their bodies through some various technical points. So here we remove those tensions on purpose to stay mobile, to keep the body available, while still keeping contact with each other, with no break in the movement, no loss of contact. So that implies for Tori to match the speed of Uke. You shouldn't go faster than Uke. You should match the speed. and to keep ideally that speed constant, or possibly increase little by little that speed as the practice unfolds. But this is very important. The other thing is the use of the body weight. Here you can see Francesco throwing me. Obviously, I'm a lot heavier than him. So to some extent, I'm not, of course, applying my full body weight on him, but I am applying some body weight on him to make him work. The question is always where you place the cursor, depending on the experience of the person that you're dealing with, their size, their weight, how much weight you put and how much weight you actually handle for them so that they're able to actually do the technique. The goal is not completely to block the other person, it's not to show them that they can't do the technique. I mean, again, if you compare my size to that of most people present on that day, if I really resisted, there are not that many people who could actually get the technique done on me within this context, without the use of atemi and so on. So you have to be very reasonable when you practice and to adapt to the other person. What I just showed here is a parallel between Daito-ryu and Aikido. What I'm explaining is that, of course, in Daito-ryu, it's a very practical art. You don't leave an open door for the partner. You immobilize at your feet, and usually you kill the partner. In Aikido, it's a completely different thing. Even though Aikido comes mostly from Daito-ryu, the sort of a revolutionary approach of Ueshiba Morie was precisely to leave that opening at the end, to leave an open door to the partner so that they could take their ukemi, unroll their ukemi in sufficient space safely, far away from you rather than inside or between your legs, and to give them a door to exit. Of course, this is a colossal risk when you think about it in terms of martial arts, because the person could come back and attack you again. But Aikido, you're betting on the future. That's precisely what makes Ueshiba Morie's Aikido very special compared to Daito-ryu, is that you're actually giving the other person a chance. You're opening the door, leaving them room to unfold their ukemi safely, and to give them the opportunity to come back and attack you again if they want. But ideally, once you've done the technique to them, you've done it in such a way which cause no pain, or as little pain as possible, that cause no fear. And ideally, that should trigger, in the best possible case, a change in their state of mind to remove aggression, not to respond to aggression with aggression. That is the reason why in Aikido, the technique looks gentler, and some of the points from Daito-ryu are removed. That makes them de facto less deadly, less efficient. It's undeniable, because the goal is different. The goal is to build a relationship. You do not want to kill the other person. You do not want to make of the other person a lifetime enemy. You're betting on the future, and you're hoping that through this interaction, which would be quite surprising to an attacker, this sort of care and kindness that you display, and that open door that you give, to build something different, to cancel the aggression. So yes, Aikido technique, of course, they're full of gaps, holes, and places where they're not the most efficient, but they are so on purpose. Now, precisely, once again, the reason why I do Daito-ryu is that I want to keep an eye on those older techniques that leave no chance to the partner, because when I make an accommodation in my technique, I want to be aware of it. I don't want to make an accommodation just by default, or because I've been shown, or because I don't know better. Any accommodation that I make in my technique that makes it less lethal or efficient, if you like that word, it's a fruit of a choice. It's not the fruit of an ignorance. So even though I am not encouraging people to learn Daito-ryu, I am building my own Aikido technique through the confidence of my knowledge of Daito-ryu. So here I'm trying to practice with most people. You're gonna see me take a lot of ukemi during that seminar, because one thing I don't like, I don't really like teachers throwing people around and expecting them to behave in such and such way. I try to teach through my ukemi rather than my words. I am convinced that when people have thrown me a few times, there is a lot of blocks and fears and anxieties that go away. Why? Because they feel that first they can do the technique, and secondly, that we are in a collaboration. This is kata geiko. what I'm going to show here is another point which I find very interesting, is that what I'm saying in Japanese is that the responsibility is on Tori. Responsibility of where to throw and how to throw. I sometimes see that in dojos, people throwing each other and they run into each other, or sometimes the throw is a little bit more severe than it should really be. And I feel that too often the responsibility is put on the shoulders of, okay, you didn't fall right, or if you don't follow enough, then of course I'm going to have to hurt you and so on. And I very strongly disagree with that. I feel that the responsibility should be always placed on Tori. In other words, Tori is responsible for making sure that there is room for Uke to unfold their Ukemi, make sure that there is time, and make sure that the technique matches that of Uke. My old teacher in France used to say that Uke does what he can and Tori does what he should, and I really agree with this. Actually, I'm saying it during that class. It was cut during it was not shot, it seems, but I'm really saying that literally during the class. So how does it manifest itself in the technique? When you take Ukemi, you do not look where you're going. You do not look at the ground, because the ground will be there for you, don't worry. But also you don't look where you're going. You trust the other person. You're trying to build that trust, and you trust the other person that they will not throw you in a place where there is somebody else, where in a place of danger. They will throw you in a place which is safe, because they're responsible for you. It's their responsibility. You're giving them your body for them to work on the technique. In return, they're responsible for your safety. This is why I don't encourage people to throw towards the outside of the mat, what you see often. In fact, I encourage people to throw within the inside of the mat to create some sort of a little bit of pressure to keep the zanshin, to keep the attention. For me, it's a kind of a cop-out to throw out of the mat in a so-called safe area. I prefer to throw within the mat, but being careful about it, to be aware of one's environment. This is basic zanshin. Zanshin has nothing to do with punching or kicking each other or threatening each other with atemi and so on. Zanshin has everything to do with your placement and your awareness of where other people are and where you throw people safely or not. Here what I'm showing is that it also applies to the technique that you do. We make mistakes, we all make mistakes. If you do a technique a little bit too rough and you feel that the partner obviously couldn't follow, which is what I just showed, there's no point saying sorry. Once again, your words, your thoughts and your actions should match. So instead of saying sorry and sometimes not even meaning it and sometimes even doing the rough technique again after that, there's no better way to say sorry than after having made a mistake or being a little bit rough or whatever, or throwing the person in somebody else, in the next few techniques to show that you're sorry and to show that you understand you've made a mistake by not making that mistake again. You maintain that relationship. You don't find yourself excuses by saying sorry, but you do in fact apologize and acknowledge your mistakes through your next technique. That's what I mean by building the relationship through the technique. And if you do that, then you're able to build a relationship and to find out how far the person can go, which is something that I will show a bit later on. Here I'm just developing one quick point, which I'm kind of rebounding of what the teacher just before, the class before mine said, explaining about vertical axis. What I'm showing here is the application of what's called tsugiyashi. Tsugiyashi is when you make a step, you bring the back leg under your body weight immediately. I try to avoid big widespread leg stances, because when you're my height and my weight, shifting your body from one leg to the other is very time consuming. It's not practical, it makes me slow. So if you see me compared to the Japanese person I'm throwing at the moment, of course I'm a lot bigger and I'm a lot slower necessarily. The only way I can actually get an edge on the speed or match his potential speed is by working on my footwork. Keeping my feet reasonably close together, which gives me more options for my next displacement and makes me faster without rushing. So those are not athletic skills, they're just like basic technique to save time, to shave off some of the necessary steps and to make yourself more reactive and more free within your technique. So here again I'm emphasizing the vertical line rather than pushing in a diagonal from the ground. You're either generating power from the top down or from the bottom up, either through gravity or using the ground as a kind of springboard. No diagonal. I try to avoid diagonal because you always end up with leverage or levers which are not necessarily to your advantage. Of course, you can make that work when the partner is smaller than you, but of course, as soon as the partner gets bigger, you're going to run into trouble. Whether when you do that with a vertical line in mind, then you can leverage gravity and use the ground and so on. Here, what I'm trying to show here is that I want to build resilience in practice. Of course, that guy has been taking lots of fall and is really tired and so on, but I'm really encouraging him to continue, slow down if he must, but to keep going and to see through that relationship how far he can go. I really like this sort of, you can call it a workout if you want, that physical aspect of practice to actually push people far in their physical capacity. Of course, without danger, without pain, without hurt, but see how far they can go physically, because of course, Aikido is a physical activity. I am not ashamed to say that I do not mind including aspects of sports in its noble sense in practice. Aikido can be a very healthy sport to practice, and I like to do that. I like to give people a physical challenge, to give myself a physical challenge without punishment, without hurt and so on. But there's no reason why an Aikido class, for the people who want, for the people who can, there's no reason why an Aikido class couldn't be a workout in itself. It's a very healthy thing to do. So I have no problem calling Aikido sometimes in some context a sport. So what I'm showing here is again, same thing, trying to match the partner's speed, not too fast, not too slow, stay together while increasing slightly the speed with every technique to see how far the partner can go and get to know each other if you like. You're trying to push a little bit the boundaries within that respect, with that care for each other, and see how far everybody can go. I want to see when he's tired, does he remain relaxed? Is he still doing those big techniques, opening like I was suggesting him to do before? Are those things still in place? And you can see that, of course, he's doing that brilliantly. Tiredness is here, but he's still there. He's still applying the thing that we've discussed before. So this next technique is a little bit of sideways. I'm showing here a quick Daito-ryu application of Kotegaeshi. This is one of the techniques from the first series of the Daito-ryu curriculum on Ryotedori. We may call that Ura Kotegaeshi if we want. It's called Kotegaeshi in Daito-ryu. It doesn't really matter. But again, I'm highlighting the fact that here I'm creating a lot of tensions in his hands, in his elbows, of course in the immobilization as well, in the Daito-ryu form. But when I'm doing it in an Aikido way, you can see here in contrast that I'm leaving a lot of room, a lot of space. I'm making the technique a lot more ample, and I am not resorting into locking down some of the points that I locked before in the Daito-ryu technique. And again, by design, on purpose, to leave some room to the partner to unfold their ukemi, land safely, and to get a general sense of a pleasant technique, not a punishing technique. Which is again why I throw the partner away from me rather than pin him down. Makes particular sense, of course, in a COVID situation where, in any case, I wouldn't want to do too many immobilization techniques, just to not have to be too close to each other and certainly not on top of each other during that pandemic. You can see sitting behind us a bunch of very senior people. The gentleman with the dark mask here on the right is Onohai Toryu Menkyo Kaiden, and on the left you can't really see him here, but yeah, you can just barely see him between me and my partner here. is Yamashima Sensei, 8th Dan Aikido. So I let you imagine the pressure of teaching in front of those people. But that's again, that's an exercise for me. How do I stay relaxed and you know, confident, even though people as senior as them are watching what I do. So I think that wraps it up for this class. I hope it explains a little bit about the context, and maybe I'll be doing a bit more of those in the future. Thank you for watching.